I will call to order the regular Park and Recreation meeting for October 26th. If you'll all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Yamada, will you call roll, please?
Chair Longstreet.
Here.
Vice Chair Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Wiscombe.
Here.
Commissioner Cavazos.
Here.
Commissioner Lesnar-Buxton.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez-Cohen.
Here.
Do we have any changes to the agenda? Okay. Written communications. So we are at public comment. Any member of the public may address the Commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the Commission. The total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. So our first speaker will be Randall Frank.
Actually, Frank Randall. But
Oh, okay.
I answered to Randall Frank as well.
Okay. Sorry about that. Probably what happens when you have 2 first names, right?
Maybe so. Maybe
Okay.
so. We're here with Hale Preserve /Park. We think Preserve is kind of a nifty name. I don't know if it's better or worse, but it's just kind of a thought. As you know, in January, we had stairs that were in the park. They were taken out. We communicated with Parks and Rec on the day they were taken out. We were told to come here, and we came here in February and in March. In April, we were told not to come again, which we didn't. Parks and Rec had our first meeting in September. That was 8 months later. And at that meeting, it was obvious that there was no thought about how to replace the stairs, but they did ask us to do one thing, which we did. Parks and Rec wanted to make certain that the community wanted to have an entry in from Eucalyptus Hill Road. So we communicated with neighbors, mainly Sonny Engel, whose name I put on the front of this. This is the kind of a one-liner. If you support stairs in from Eucalyptus Hill Road, let us know. Here's a list of 148 people that gave us a thumbs up, and so we thought we'd give it to you with their names and addresses if you'd like that. We really would like to move forward with this thing sooner rather than later. We're willing to do work, raise money. We need some direction. We're not sure you're the right group. We really don't know what your role is in this process, but if it's to represent the public, that's us. That's those almost 150 folks. We'd just like to get to the next step. I'm not sure Parks and Rec is the right place to go. Maybe Public Works is. I'm not sure. Bendy, who supports our project, 100% of the Eucalyptus Hill Improvement Association, where the park or preserve is, they support it. The last 10 years of presidents support it. The homeowner or the property that
Need
used
to wrap
to,
up.
I will, that used to own Hale Park, they support it. And we've got another 140 do.
Thank you.
Help.
Our next speaker will be Kenneth Locke.
My name is Kenneth Locke. I went before the city, did a public comment, and mentioned to them that the tournament that was just played at the Muni tennis courts was the equivalent of Special Olympics. And I'm bringing a whole new teaching method for tennis to the table, and it just turns out that the old method actually is causing the children to not reach either mental fitness or physical fitness. And it's kind of like a no-brainer when you think about it. I'm actually bringing tennis over to where it's a holistic health practice. You're going to develop both arms. I'm actually working on communicating with tennis racket manufacturers and actually provide them with an instructional manual for actually how you actually would use a tennis racket as an educational tool. And I'm sorry to say that right now at the Muni, none of the teachers, I'm sorry to say, are not providing educations that are providing people with higher levels of intelligence or coordination. And let's see, that really needs to be recognized. I went before school board, also city yesterday, but I mentioned the idea of who has the responsibility for educating people or making sure that they're educated. And if in fact that they're not being educated, the idea of informing. So I figure that ultimately, again, they're not providing an education down there that's actually allowing people to increase in intelligence and coordination. And it has to be recognized as such eventually. I'm going to be working on what I mentioned, developing this instructional manual for the racket manufacturers in the tennis industry. And I'll if I have any progress with those guys, I'll make you guys aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue Burke.
My name is Sue Burke, and I am the president of the Eucalyptus Hill Improvement Association. I'm here speaking about the Hale Park stairs. As you can see by the number of signatures that we got on our petition, that this park is an important part of our neighborhood. And since the neighbors can no longer enter or exit the park, this has become a safety issue. If there's ever a fire when someone's in that park, there is no way for them to exit that park from the Eucalyptus Hill side. Basically, I wanted to point out that by the city removing those stairs that were in place, you actually created a problem that wasn't there. I mean, this is, very, very important to our neighborhood. So I just wanted to make sure that that you realize that and that we can get this process going and get stairs in as soon as possible.
Thank you. And our last speaker will be Judy Fessenden. You have to come up to the mic. We need you on. Here you go.
Hi. I'm going to save you time, and as they spoke so eloquently, I just want to say that we do like to be an example for the rest of Santa Barbara. There are a lot of seniors that use it that aren't walking now or off the street, so we do hope we can get this finished quickly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming for public comment. That will close public comment for today, and we have a youth council report. I don't see we'll move that farther down the agenda if Mr. Steady comes. Commissioner committee assignment reports. Let's just start down at that end. If you have anything to report.
I don't have anything to report.
Go ahead. Okay. Yeah. Yes, you. Go ahead.
I attended the regular Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting, and Mr. Downey reported on enforcement, and there are 8 new cases, and 2 of those cases were referred to the Community Development Department. 2 cases were closed during the month, and there are now 7 open cases. Mr. Downey also reported on the Coda sycamore. Apparently the stump has sprouted, and it's been caged off to protect it from vandalism. Someone had asked some questions about that. And we visited the sites for all the trees on our agenda today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lesnar Buxton.
I attended the Neighborhood Advisory Commission, got a tour of the River West side and found out more about what's happening there and how the city is working to remove some of the trees from the pathway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cavazos.
Yeah, I attended the youth council meeting on the 17th. They're actively accepting applications, wrapping up for new members. I think they're going to start having interviews with council soon. They're also working on getting us a committed liaison, trying to pull some some strings there. I mean, these kids do a lot of stuff. As an example, they held a speak out this past Monday on the marijuana initiative. I don't know if they were for it or against it, but I mean, I think the example that they're setting, and if you see the staffing that they have, I mean, I've never seen it that full. So it's a great group doing some good things. They'll be working on some fundraising, so get your checkbooks ready. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. I also attended the Neighborhood Advisory Council meeting at the Lower West Side. It was held at our former Lower West Side Center, and we toured the Cornell Street Hill, where there's some issues on pathway safety, I would say. All right. We have ceremonial items. Ms. Zachary.
Chair Longstreet, members of the commission, we have a employee recognition for Ramon Perez, who got 15 years, recognized for 15 years of service by the City Council this month. He is our full-time custodial staffer, so if the park's closing and restrooms need service, he essentially works all the hours that people don't work. So he's been a tremendous help to our department, and we want to share with you that he got his 15-year pin this month.
Well, congratulations to Mr. Perez. And I was not here last month, and I would like to extend my congratulations to Mrs. Yamada for 30 years. And who would have thought? Good for you. It does. It does. So now we're at the summary of council actions. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the council actions listed? Okay, and now we are to our minutes for last month.
I'll move that we accept the minutes from the regular meeting on Wednesday, September 28th, 2016.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I will say I did review the tape of the minutes, and thank you, Ms. Clark, for chairing. Any corrections or any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. And now we are to street trees and a new face. Welcome.
Chair Longstreet, members of the commission, Nathan Slack, our new street tree supervisor, is going to do the presentation today for you.
Good afternoon, Chair Longstreet and commission members. I will be presenting the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendations. City Arborist Tim Downey is available if there's any questions or comments that I can't answer. The first recommendation comes, the applicant at 633 Island View Drive is requesting the removal of 6 street trees, 5 of which are American sweet gums, and 1 is a lemon bottle brush, as well as a front setback tree, which is an olive. The applicant stated in the application concerning the street trees, there were two separate requests or concerns regarding the street tree species. The first, with the American sweet gum, the 5 of the 6 trees, was long-term potential infrastructure conflicts. It is a tree that can grow to significant size and has a well-documented history of causing hardscape disruptions. These trees are quite juvenile, and no problems exist presently. The other concern was with the lemon bottle brush. I'll back up and also say that the American sweet gum is not a designated street tree species for Island View Drive. However, the lemon bottle brush is a designated street tree species. The concern with that was primarily debris related, and also stating that it was somewhat poorly performing. The committee reviewed the street trees and came to the decision that it would be in the best interest to remove all 6 street trees, including the designated street tree species of the lemon bottle brush. I'll jump ahead to the setback because it was made in all one motion. So there's a large mature olive tree in the front setback. It's kind of difficult to see. The tree's in fair health, and in this case the applicant was requesting removal primarily due to debris related problems associated with the olives fruit drop, specifically on the driveway, and the applicant had stated that there had been previous issues with guests visiting the house and slipping on the olives. So all of these requests for removal were viewed together. So for the street trees, the motion was to approve the removal of all 6 street trees and to deny the removal of the front setback tree. The committee agreed on a 4-1 vote to approve the removal of all 6 street tree species, including the denial of the front setback olive tree. The member who chose not to support the motion felt that there was not a need to remove the lemon bottle brush on the street. The rest of the committee felt that it was performing poorly enough that replacement street tree would be of more benefit. Moving forward, the committee also additionally recommended that at a later date, the street tree species designation on Island View be reviewed so that a code designation could be made of a tree that can achieve a greater potential canopy than the lemon bottle brush, which is a very small stature species of tree. That to be reviewed at a later date. And the removal of the street trees was conditional upon the replacement of one single street tree species in front of the home.
Okay, are there questions?
So at this time, because you're going to review the street tree designation for that street, at this time you don't have or the applicant doesn't have a replacement species in mind, is that correct?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Clark, that is correct. So when the street is re-reviewed and an additional species is designated, that will be the species of tree that the resident would be directed to replace with.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Cavazos.
So is there a reason why they're only doing one tree, replacing one tree? Can't we do like a 1-to-1 or like that kind of replacement ratio?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner
Cavazos.
Thank you. There was extensive discussion in regards to that, and as you can see in the photo, there's pretty extensive planting on the property itself in conjunction with the street trees. So there's several large, semi-mature California sycamores on the corner of the property. And then there's also the olive on the front of the property. And if you're on site, there's really actually only one suitable location. And since they're going to make a code designation of a tree that grows to a larger size, it really is only one space for one tree in front of that parcel.
Yeah, the way I saw the situation, you did a good job presenting it. That when you first look at it, you think there's a lot of impact, but the liquid ambars are going to grow to be too big, and there's a lot of utility box conflicts in the right of way there. So really, I think everyone agreed that all members of the committee agreed that there really is, and Mr. Downey concurred, there is really only one suitable place for a replacement tree. So, and I certainly support what Stack did and would be happy to make a motion when you're ready.
I think we have, is this the property owner? Why don't you come up and you have 2 minutes up here, and we will get your form later.
Okay, he's got it. My name's Rob Hunter. I live at 633 Island View. I bought the house in April. And it might seem like I'm want to just get rid of all the trees on my property, and that's not the case. I believe that I'm trying to create something that is more in keeping with the proportions of the house and the street. Along the street, there are the predominant thing are queen palms, which are not native. And then up the street, there's some plum trees that are fruitless. Those would be great because they provide enough shade. They provide a canopy in the end. They're not too tall. I don't know if that was portrayed in the application. In regards to the setback tree, I didn't realize that the olive was fruited, and it started dropping its olives. And I understand that, it's my responsibility if somebody slips and falls on the sidewalk, on the public sidewalk, that I am responsible for that slip and fall. And we had a guest that actually slipped on the olives down a 20% grade on our driveway. So, for that reason, I need some way to mitigate my damages. The city can't, just say, okay, we can't take it out. I would love to plant another tree, maybe another sycamore. It's not about the mess that it creates. It's about the hazard. And there's people going down the street with baby strollers and things like that. So I really think that this is I'm willing to do like a 36-inch box tree, a larger tree, so that it's not, just a small tree. So I'm more than willing to do two street trees, but I agree with them. The way that it's set on the property, one would be the best.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, I was wondering, you'd have to come back up to the podium, please, to answer this. I was wondering if you had spoken with Mr. Downey about the possibility of doing some trimming of the fruited branches on the olive, because I think that's what the Street Tree Advisory Committee was talking about. Have you explored that possibility?
Well, I actually have somebody that is willing to take the tree, but as far as trimming it, I had a tree trimmer there, and he said, well, you need a tree permit, and you can't cut certain size branches. The problem is that once you start trimming on one side of the tree to protect the sidewalk, it's a multi-trunk, and so you're going to end up having one of those multi-trunks seriously cut back, and then the tree's kind of going to be lopsided, and it just really would look odd to create the safety that I'm looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there other questions or comments on this issue? I mean, I do know that olive trees can be sprayed every year to control the fruiting on them. My question would be, how old is that olive tree? I was really focused when I went to look on the street trees and not the olive tree, so.
Chair Longstreet, it's likely 50 to 60 years old.
Because the one thing I've got to say about an olive tree right now is they're a drought-tolerant tree that, the property I manage, we probably have 40 of them, and they are what's living, So I would hate to get rid of a mature tree when we're taking out 6 trees along the front. It's a hazard, and I think the remedy to it is, of course, sweeping up olives, but you have to do it pretty regularly. All righty. Other comments or questions?
I'd just like to say I agree with Chair Longstreet that the applicant maybe should look into spraying the tree or trimming it before we do take out a tree that's thriving where many other trees aren't.
Well, I would make a motion that we approve the removal of the street trees, the 6 street trees, under the condition that the applicant plants a replacement street tree of the species that is designated, which will be coming up at a future stack meeting, and also deny the removal of the olive tree at this time. I believe that approval of the street trees in our code is in the interest of good forest management practices, and the denial is in accordance with our code in terms of materially affecting the character of the neighborhood, because that tree has a great significant positive impact on the neighborhood. So I would hope that the applicant is able to remedy the problem of the fruit in another way, and I know that the Urban Forest Department would be willing to work with you on some ways to do that. So that's my motion.
Do we have a second? A second? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
2 against. So it passes 4-2. And any decision made by this body is appealable within 10 business days. All right, we go to item B1, 732 Calle Alela. A new street to me when I found it today.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the applicant at 732 Calle Alela is requesting the removal of one silk floss tree from the front setback of their property. The applicant stated in the application for removal concerns with existing infrastructure. Apparently, the gas and water service was placed underground several years ago during a remodeling for both their property and the adjacent property. And then the street or the setback tree was then planted over top of that existing infrastructure. And you can't see it in the photograph, but the backflow service, everything's in really close proximity right behind the tree as well. The applicant is requesting the removal for long-term potential infrastructure conflicts. And they had stated that they have already had a water leak associated with the tree. The committee reviewed the application and the tree on site, and after review, made a motion to approve the removal of the existing front setback tree with the condition that a new street tree be planted in the space, setback tree, in the space between the driveway and the existing infrastructure where they felt there was adequate space to support a new setback planting. And there was also the condition that the tree that's planted achieve a maximum mature height of 25 feet.
Thank you. Are there questions? No? Motion?
I'll move that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee and approve the removal of the silk floss tree at 732 Calle Alela under the condition that the applicant replace with a canopy tree that can achieve a mature height of 25 feet.
Second to that motion?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
I'm just abstaining.
Oh, you,
I decided I wanted to abstain on it.
okay.
I can't tell if I'm being impartial. I know the residents, and I really like them, so
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Probably it'd be best to next time recuse ahead of time and just say it. Yeah, that would. Now we move on to item C1.
Chair Longstreet and Commission members, the applicant at 2104 Bass Street is requesting the removal of one coast live oak tree from the front setback. In the photograph, there are two trees, and it appears as though they're both in the front setback, and the initial application was for the removal of both trees. During evaluation, it was determined that the tree, which is on the right side of the photograph, was outside of the setback and therefore did not fall under the ordinance for tree preservation in setbacks. That tree has actually already been removed. The homeowner was motivated for removal, and that tree is no longer there. The committee, the applicant in the application stated concerns with debris. There's a small block wall that's adjacent to the sidewalk. The property is elevated. There's really no damage there now, but they stated that as a potential cause of damage in the future and a reason for removal. The committee reviewed the application and the tree on site, and after review felt that, especially given the fact that the tree on the right was being removed, that the removal of both trees would be too significant to the parcel and to the community as a whole, and unanimously made a motion to deny the removal of the tree located in the front setback.
Thank you. Questions? Comments? I will say that I hope the second tree does okay. It looked pretty bare today. Do we have a motion for this item?
I'll move that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee and recommend that and deny the removal of the Quercus agrifolia at 2104 Bass Street. The removal of the tree would cause loss of canopy, shade, and wildlife. So I think it's in good forest management practices to retain the tree. And since the other oak has already been removed, loss of both, I think, would materially affect the character of the neighborhood.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. One against. All righty. That concludes our street tree items, and thank you very much. Good job first time out. We'll see you back again. And that brings us to Director's Report. Ms. Zachary,
Chair Longstreet, members of the Commission, in thinking about the Commission's business and the various activities that the department's engaged in, it seemed that it would be a good idea to start providing you with a report on things that we're working on, not so much that we'd engage in discussion this evening, but it would keep you up to date on certain activities that we have going on, and then also alert you to things that would be coming on a future agenda so that you could anticipate or you could follow up with me directly afterwards, or as a commission ask for something else on the agenda. So what I'd like to do is briefly work through that report and give you some information, starting with the drought response. We keep talking about it's the worst drought on record. It is the worst drought on record. We've been working very closely with the Public Works Department regarding strategies to respond to the drought. We prepared a report and a strategy back in 2014, given that another couple of years, unfortunately, have passed. Some changes have occurred with the city's water supply. The desalination plant will be coming online early next year. And also the water rates have changed in order to be able to fund the city's new infrastructure. It's led us to determine we need to do an update to that strategy and would like to report back to you on where we are, what we've achieved, and where we think we might need to go, both during the drought but then also post-drought, because we have seen our water costs go up significantly, and we'll need to strategize on how much of the department's resources need to be applied in different locations. There is a monthly report to council on the drought and drought update and the work effort of the Public Works Department, and they have a lot of different things that they're trying to achieve. They've been under quite a bit of advanced work. But we will be there next Tuesday because we'll be also participating in the presentation on the impact of drought related to trees and the things that we've done as a department for our own city public resource trees, but then also what the community can do related to protecting trees during the drought, particularly if there are further water restrictions that the council approves that could affect outdoor watering and then ultimately affect outdoor vegetation. We anticipate bringing this back to you at either your November meeting or your December meeting with sort of where we are today, where we think we'll go in the short term, and then just some longer term issues for you to consider. It also give you the opportunity to think about the budget impacts related to keeping our parks lush once we do have more water. And even today, with the recycled water that we currently use, that also costs money, and so we have to make management decisions. And then also at your November meeting, we'll be bringing forward a discussion item for the Commission related to park and recreation facility safety. It's something that we've been working on for the past number of months. We want to provide you with a comprehensive look at where we have issues in our park system. It's not everywhere, but it's in many locations. It's not new either. We've done things over the last decade to address them, but we continue to have issues and considerations. We want to provide that to the Commission and get your feedback. So it'll help also focus further efforts that we have in terms of park improvement projects and park management techniques. After this meeting, there will actually be a community meeting related to Ortega Park that was initiated by Councilmember Dominguez, where we have had an increase in problems, but also a number of initiatives on the department's part, as well as the police department, to try to address what's going on in that park. So we'll be able to report back to you the outcome of that meeting. And then on October 4th, the City Council directed staff to work on an update to the smoking ordinance. The last time that the ordinance was updated, I believe, was in 2002. And there's been various initiatives over the years to look at increasing bans on smoking in various public places. And parks and recreation facilities have often been at the top of the list of that discussion. There's interest on the part of the council that we take a closer look at that and look at where we would perhaps consider further restrictions on smoking or outright prohibition on smoking in city parks and recreation facilities. It will go to the ordinance committee for further definition and refinement to determine the staff workload, and I will keep you up to date on where we are with moving that forward. And then creek restoration, you had a presentation on the Barger Canyon project by Aaron Markey, if you remember, a couple of months ago. It's under construction. If you are on Foothill and you're driving towards Goleta, you can see that there's a lot of change. The goal is to be done, and you have to be out of the creek by a certain date as a result of potential for storm events, which is what we want, rainfall, and also to be out of sensitive habitat and creek habitat. So that's moving forward. And then also we are moving forward with beginning the dialogue and sort of conception of how to develop the open space park at the end of Allen Road that we're calling the Arroyo Burro Open Space. Creeks Division is taking the lead on that, and also really focusing first primarily on how to address Arroyo Burro. We've been talking about it for many years, so now we get down to work to do that. And then in November 16th, we'll have a ribbon cutting ceremony. I'll be sending an invitation out to you for the last project of our low impact development project. And this is for the street and sidewalks on Quarantina, which actually are right near Ortega Park as well. If you recall, the other two projects that were recently completed were at Plaza Veracruz, and then also the sidewalks around Alice K. Park Memorial Garden. So it's beautiful. I encourage you, if you have a moment, to wander over there. It's really quite stunning, and we have the ribbon cutting on November 16th. At your public comment, you had some members from the neighborhood adjacent to Hill Park, the Eucalyptus Hill neighborhood. What they're referencing, if the commission remembers from prior comments, is over the years there's been a wooden ladder, and in speaking with them, they reminded me that actually the last structure was a wooden staircase that provided access out of the park at Eucalyptus Hill. There is access at Camino Viejo, so there is a way to get out of the park right now. The neighbors have, over the years, constructed or installed access, and through the city's risk manager and the city and our concerns regarding safety and liability, they were removed. We met with a group of neighbors, and those that we met with were here. Some of those were here tonight in September to talk about options and how to proceed. It's not something that's currently in our capital program, so there is no funding allocated for moving forward with a project like this. We did commit that if funding were secured, staff resources could be applied, but we had to take into consideration we have a pretty significant capital workload. George Thompson will be giving you an update after my report, and then also you'll be hearing about the FY18 through 23, if you can believe it, 2023 capital program at your November meeting, and that's where we'll be talking more about what we're working on now, what we think we'd be working on, with the focus on the next 2 years. And we committed to those neighbors that we would try to identify ways in which to move that project forward, but we needed to know, and they offered at the time that they believed there was a willingness to fundraise on the part of the residents to move it forward. It's a project that would require design review by the Historic Landmarks Commission because the wall is original to the Peabody estate, so considered a historic resource. And we've looked at options and issues, and there potentially is a solution, but as with any other project, and you would hear more about it as we move forward. There's a lot of design involved, and then design review, construction engineering, etc. We absolutely understand their desire to have that access. It's a matter of figuring out when and how and with what we could move it forward. And we will be updating our capital program to include that as a project.
I just have a quick question. Sorry about that, because I am new and I wasn't aware of what they were talking about, to be quite honest. So they had constructed their own stairway, and that's what was removed?
Over the years, neighbors have installed their own opportunities to get out of the park along Hill Park, along Eucalyptus Hill. There's quite a tall wall.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then due to safety, that's why it was...
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
And I think people forget whenever the city's involved in its public land, it's not only just the safety, it's ADA accessibility. There's a lot of things that go into it that it becomes a much more complicated project than you think.
So thank you, Chair Longstreet. So just to wrap up, we anticipate we can have more discussion about this as part of your November meeting, because it will be something that we further present, and we will be asking the Commission to sort of say, yes, you guys are on the right track with the CIP in November, and then ultimately, through the budget process, you'll have the opportunity to make recommendations on funding requests for specific projects. So as usual, there are a number of steps in the process. And then a couple of other things to mention. We're engaging in our facility holiday marketing initiative to find a way to encourage people to use our facilities. So we're offering a discount as they go into the holiday season. You may have received, if you're on our e-recreation mailing list, so if you know of anyone that wants to have a holiday party, we're all ears. And then we're moving forward with hopefully finalizing our contract agreement with a new software provider, and that is essentially to facilitate and enhance our program and facility booking system, which is very much in need of an overhaul. It will be a multi-month project to actually design it and then also implement it, and we will be presenting to the Commission more information as it pulls together. We still need to get the contract approved at City Council. And then looking ahead to your Commission agenda, the two things that are priorities next month are the 6-year CIP and then the Park and Recreation Facility considerations. And then in December, we'd like to give you an overview of our playground program. It's been a while since the Commission heard about that. I mentioned the drought response strategy. And then if we've made enough project on Franceschi House and Park, because we will be going to Council in January or February with the 3 options, for new commissioners, it's really focused around the house. And over the last 30 years, we've asked the question a number of times, should we or shouldn't we renovate the house? And we're back trying to answer that question. And if not, what else would we do in that location? We're doing some engineering and geotech analyses that'll help us define what the cost of doing that work would be, in addition to the cost of making park improvements. So with that, if there are some brief questions, I'd be happy to answer. But I wanted to just there's so many things that this department's working on, but they don't always end up on your agenda on a regular basis. There may be things that commissioners are curious to know about and would like to see summarized in a future report, and I'd be happy to do that for you.
One suggestion I'd like to make before we get to budget and capital projects and things like that we have so many new commissioners that it would be a good idea for us to have some site visits and maybe do one of our tours around and see some of the sites, some of the recently completed things, but also I think Franceschi House, if we're going to be discussing it, deserves a site visit to bring people up to speed. And the same maybe even with Hale Park, so that we really understand the issues. I think none of us really understand the historic issues with it. That's a new one, but we need to really be aware of the complications involved in it, that it sounds simple and it is not. So that'd be my suggestion before budget and capital. Yes.
Yeah, I want to thank Ms. Zachary for this report. I think this is great for us to have this recap, and I think it's wonderful to kind of keep up to date on really what's active in the department and what's going on. Yes, I did receive the promo for the holiday marketing. It looks great, so I think that's very exciting. I'm also really excited to. I know you said it's going to take a while, but the what do you call it? The Sunrise, the registration software. That I think that's really going to hopefully give the revenues of the department a big kick, upward, because it's cumbersome right now. So I think that would certainly be a really good point to support in City Council with that. Yeah, I look forward to seeing the facility safety update. That's Ms. Chair Longstreet and I were discussing that earlier. It's really a citywide interdepartmental problem. It's not a Parks and Rec problem, and hopefully there'll be some good solutions that come out of that to help us keep our parks safe.
Okay. Other questions, comments? No, I think thank you for this, and we appreciate it. It looks like we have some interesting discussions ahead of us, and I look forward to supporting the department and some changes through some of these difficult issues. Thank you. Okay, so now we are on to capital improvement projects update.
Chair Longstreet, members of the Commission, George Thompson's going to do this presentation. Without belaboring the point, I just wanted to give a little bit of intro. We talked last month about the fact that your CIP would be coming forward in November, where we're taking an effort. We're giving you this update so that when you go into the discussion next month, you have a sense of, okay, that's what they're working on, and that's why they being staff, why staff might be recommending we continue along this path, or what we recommend we also add something to the plate. So it's not going to tell you everything about everything we're working on today, but really a status report on the ones that are currently active, and then you'll get even more information in November. I would also request that if there are questions from tonight's meeting, if not tonight, subsequently related to capital, please feel free to send them to us, because we do want to make sure we provide you with as much most comprehensive information at the next meeting as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Chair Longstreet. This is actually going to be a bit of a virtual tour of all of the projects that we've been working on. If we were to do it in a van, it would probably take 3 or 4 days, so we'll try to get through this in less than that. Okay, so I've organized this presentation to talk about, first off, the projects that we've completed. I was here in March giving an update on the department's progress for our capital program. Since then, we've completed quite a few projects, and we have a whole another suite of projects that are in design development and construction, and I'll talk about them individually. This is the new playground at Bonnet Park. It was completed in April, cost $183,000. A large portion of that, $151,000, was paid for through the Community Development Block Grant Program. Really important program for funding these types of projects. The design here really speaks to the park and existing color schemes as well as the natural features in the park. Old Mission Creek is right next to it, so there's a nice homage to that in the play surfacing. It's really well used. I was out there this morning to take this photo, and there are 3 families there utilizing the playground structure. This is also the first implementation of a larger concept master plan that the department developed. And so as we'll talk about projects that are coming down the pike in concept planning, we'll be talking more about the other features that we're envisioning for the park, including adult fitness equipment, sports turf field improvements, and access improvements. The Oak Park wading pool ramp was completed before the summer season of the wading pool. This is the pre-photo. You can see a large lawn area which required a significant amount of irrigation and maintenance. Pool users gave us feedback that they really wanted more concrete deck space, and there was really no way for an accessible entrance into the pool itself. So during construction, you can see here we have the construction crew out. They're setting forms for various drainage improvements, and here it is after the project. Expanded deck space. You can see in the middle of the photo there's the accessible ramp into the bottom of the pool. Expanded seating areas, as well as bringing the whole pool complex up to environmental health safety code requirements, new signage, and so forth. Let me just talk a little bit about the cost on that project. It was $100,000 total, $72,000 for construction. The remaining cost was for design and materials testing during construction. The Municipal Tennis Center ADA Pathways project is one of the more recent projects that was completed just in August. This is just a portion of the project. The entire frontage of the municipal stadium and office area was also improved, so accessible entrances into the office area, expanded van accessible parking spaces, restriping of that portion of the parking lot. And on the right photo here, you see a new pathway that extends the western portion of the center out towards Old Coast Highway. So this is a new accessible pathway. And again, this is the first phase in a larger phased implementation of several projects, one being the Municipal Tennis Center Playground, which I'll talk about later in the presentation. And also Public Works is going to be installing a new crosswalk, basically where this pathway comes out onto Old Coast Highway, and that construction will start in December. This was a project that was managed in part with our Public Works Facilities division. It was a great collaboration between our 2 departments to make these improvements. The construction cost was $64,000, and I just want to mention by name Bradley Klinzing, who was a project manager. He really did a great job, and appreciate his efforts.
May I ask?
Absolutely.
On that, what's the width of the path, Mr. Thompson?
This is actually variable. It's 5 to 6 feet wide, and then per ADA requirements, we do have passing spaces every 400 feet, so it widens out in some areas to almost 10 feet wide.
And what's the material?
The photo on the right is actually a permeable asphalt. for stormwater compliance. So it's a relatively new product that the department has worked with. It's been in the industry for over 20 years, but for us as a department, it's a newer material. Where we have existing asphalt, we just use the traditional asphalt overlay. So if you do get a chance, especially Thursday or Friday, if it's raining, go take a look at that. It works. We've tested it in the field just with a water bottle, and it delivers as promised.
Quite lovely.
This is the Bird Refuge Stretch Area, a really exciting project, very well received by the community so far. It is a free, accessible exercise equipment that looks nice, was approved by Historic Landmarks Commission, has a real sculptural quality to it. And shortly after it was installed, the Santa Barbara Independent picked up the project and ran a nice piece on it in September. The construction cost was $56,000 for the total cost. $14,000 of that was for the equipment. It's stainless steel, durable, manufactured. It really needs to resist all of the salt corrosion that we have along our waterfront. And then $32,000 for construction. About $10,000 of the total construction price was a donation, which was very much appreciated. Also in the construction costs, we did improvements to the parking lot, put in an accessible van space as well as an accessible path to the stretch equipment. So now we're going to be shifting more towards projects that are in construction. We just saw the projects that are completed and the community is enjoying. One of the most visible public facilities on the Chase Palm Park, the ocean side of Chase Palm Park, is our restroom facility there. It's very well used, constructed in 1972, never received a full renovation. And so now we've shut the restroom down temporarily starting in early October. You can see the condition of the restroom before we started. Our janitorial staff does a great job of getting in there, not only cleaning, but also removing a lot of the safety issues such as drug needles. I'm sure you'll hear about them next month and in the ensuing discussion. But fundamentally, we have worn surfaces that are difficult to clean, access issues where we have spaces where people can camp out illegally overnight. And so through our design and specifications, we've improved the restroom to the point where after the project is done, we'll see a lot of those issues go away. So this was taken a couple weeks ago. The interior of the restroom has been completely gutted. You can see on the left-hand side, this is the men's side of the restroom, scraping all of the old tile off. We had lead both in the tile grout and in the paint, so we did remediation on that. And then on the right side, you see some improvements that are going to be made to the entrances for ADA, as well as removing all the old concrete to get at the sewer main, which is below that area. We're replacing that as well. And restrooms are less glamorous projects, but they're obviously an essential necessity. I love this photo in the upper right because this is a glamorous view out of a somewhat non-glamorous facility. It's $1 million view, and after the project is completed, I encourage all of you to go in and look at the finishes that we've chosen and the durability of them. Speaking of costs for this project, $200,000 roughly construction cost for the remodel, and anticipated completion date in mid-December. The Los Baños bike rack project, directly in front of the Los Baños pool. I brought this project to you in March. The department went to Historic Landmarks Commission and got approvals for 10 bike racks, the hoop-style bike racks that are going to go just to the left of the main entrance in the existing turf area. We're also doing a full landscape renovation of the front of the building. And it's really, at this point, collaboration with Friends of Los Baños. We've met with them. They're doing a little bit of fundraising, expected to partially fund the project, and it will be a real benefit to the users of the pool.
If I could just jump in, Chair Longstreet. Back to this project, this is something that pool users have come to us fairly regularly, and part of their concerns is needing a safe place to park their bike while they're using the pool, and that in front of the building would be the safest location. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out where and how, and quite a bit of time going through design review on it because it is designated structure of merit by the city, so it creates complications as well. But as far as implementation, we're also using this as an opportunity for the Parks Division to be involved in the redesign and installation of the new landscape. Wherever we can, where we find we have a project that we can accommodate in-house, we're trying to do that. In fact, if you've been by the 620 Laguna office lately or 402 East Ortega, you'll see we have entirely new landscaping in front of both of those facilities. And that landscaping was designed and installed by Parks Division staff. We generated the desire to do that because we put 2 accessible ramps into each of those buildings last year. So this is another example where we can create a collaborative opportunity to actually implement the project, and then not only for a staff-related project, but also we're very, very sensitive to cost. As we try to do things, we're finding increasingly that construction costs are going up, and we're finding we need to add funding. And we had this experience before the last economic downturn where we even didn't do a project because it became unaffordable. So this is an idea of, well, we can still do this, and let's try to do it efficiently, economically, but also turn it into a department project that people can be proud of.
Okay, the next section of the presentation are...
Yeah, I had a quick question. So the bike racks are essentially in the same location. What makes it safer? Because I am a huge swimmer, and I actually park my bike in the pool, which the coaches, you're not supposed to, but they said to do it because there was bikes that were stolen just a few months ago from the very front of the building.
Right.
And I ride there probably 2 or 3 times a week and park my bike.
Chair and Commissioners, if you look at the photo, one of the design criteria for this project was clearing up the front entryway. So we have 4 existing bike racks there. There was an obvious need for additional bike racks. There was obviously a need to clear up the entryway so that we don't have 20 bikes scattered in front of the doors. So we're adding 10 bike racks, actually removing the 4 in front of the doorway area and adding a new concrete pad into the little landscaping area to the left of the doors. So they'll be out of the way but close enough to the entrance where they're in close proximity to the main use of the building. Relocating the trash can as well onto that new concrete pad, basically just cleaning up the front of the building and providing more bike parking.
So I guess the answer is it's not going to take away all risk, but make it better.
Yeah, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, part of it is this is a kind of a difficult place to put bike racks. It would be much easier if we did them on the side, right where the wading pool is located, and that clearly would not be acceptable because there isn't enough activity in that location. I would also just like to point out that there are staff there, but their job is not to monitor bike racks, and that's part of kind of what happens in a community. We have to provide a place to lock a bike and hope that it stays there. And in a place where there's enough activity, there's more coming and going, that we hope will encourage bikes to remain until their owners come collect them.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, the next set of projects that I'm going to discuss are projects that are in design. We have 2 projects that are not specifically called out in the presentation, but they've come to the Commission fairly recently, and they are the Davis Center renovation project and the Cabrillo Pavilion and Bathhouse project. The Davis Center project, in the staff report, we indicated that it was going to be at the Historic Landmarks Commission on November 2nd. It's actually going to be on November 17th, so I just want to make that clarification. And Cabrillo Pavilion and Bathhouse, just a quick update. We have submitted our construction plans for the building permit. We're still on track, pending full funding of the project, construction in early 2018. Okay, moving back to Cabrillo Ballpark renovation. Historic Landmarks Commission reviewed the concept plan back in May. They did not find the basketball courts and the home run fence acceptable design components of the project. In addition, in June of this year, City Council reduced the amount of funding for the project as part of the annual budget process. And so staff took those two items and took the project back to Historic Landmarks Commission with no basketball court and no home run fence, and did a little bit of redesign, and I'll talk about some of those components right now. The really major parts that are in the project are, we're going to renovate the sports field, so the softball field, and really invest money in the core use of the area, and that includes turf renovation as well as upgrading the irrigation system and the infield. We have a new recreational component which mimics the bird refuge stretch equipment. Same design is being proposed here, but more pieces of equipment, so a user could have a full body workout at this location. And those exercise pieces are located along the southern perimeter of the park. There are these half circle areas here. Each of them have 2 to 3 pieces of equipment on them. And then a new walking path along here, which would be oriented into a full circuit around the park. From the curb appeal aspects, we've got 2 fairly substantial improvements, one along the northern intersection, and that's really looking at improving accessibility, improving the fence design along the dugouts, and also improving the curb appeal of the existing structure, which is a restroom, and the landscaping there. And then along the southeastern intersection here, it still retains the entry plaza that the commission saw before. We actually went to Historic Landmarks Commission last Wednesday. They provided really positive comments, and then the next steps for the department now for this project is to go to the Planning Commission for a coastal development permit. We're slated to go in December 8th, I believe. And then back to Historic Landmarks Commission pending the issuance of the CDP and positive findings from the Planning Commission. Going through all of that process, once that's completed, we would expect construction to begin in late spring 2017. We currently have $729,000 to get us through final design and construction for the project.
Questions? Yeah. Couple questions, Mr. Thompson. First of all, up by the restrooms, that component of the project really hasn't changed from what was presented a while back, right? It sounds like
correct.
What you're saying.
That component is essentially the same. We've refined it more so that really looking at the essential components of the project, and that for us means how do we reduce the cost, improve recreational opportunities. And the thing that did change there is previously we had a curb extension to try to make the accessible grade into the dugout areas. We did additional design and found that we could accommodate accessibility without creating that a fairly expensive curb extension. So you don't see that curb bump out there.
Okay. And then my other question is related to down by the chromatic gate in that area. Yeah. Are there still going to be some play mounds?
Not close to the chromatic gate, but
No, but
actually
right over by the
here,
exercise
we still
equipment?
have one play mound proposed behind this exercise area.
Okay, what are the things that are behind the exercise equipment? That thing.
This is a landscape planter, a new proposed landscape planter. One here,
Okay.
here. Basically just softens the exercise equipment pads.
Okay, but you do, because I don't see a play mound on that drawing. So
It's actually this arrow with this tiny text right here.
Yeah.
It's a turf play mound.
Okay.
Right. So currently we have it proposed right here.
Okay.
In close enough proximity to exercise equipment. If a family does want to come out and use the exercise equipment, the kids could use that play mound while being visible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the Municipal Tennis Center Playground, as I mentioned before, Phase 1, the Accessible Pathways project has been completed. Phase 2 would be the playground, as shown here, and a tennis patio on the other side of the complex that would support tennis tournament functions. Right now, we went to Planning Commission in early September. Planning Commission made the required findings and approved a coastal development permit. Next week, we go to Historic Landmarks Commission on November 2nd for final design review. And then shortly thereafter, we submit our construction plans for a building permit. The project is not currently funded. We have secured a $53,000 grant for playground equipment from the Wood Claysons Foundation. The department plans to submit a coastal CDBG grant to fund the project in its entirety. That application is due in December. And then as part of our FY18 budget, we also plan to make a general fund request to secure the rest of the funding for the project. So pending full funding, construction would be anticipated to start in early 2018.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, if I could just add a little bit. As you recall, we had a recommendation last year and for $300,000 in general fund support for this project, and the City Council chose not to move in that direction in favor of making other city infrastructure improvements. We really believe this project is a grant-funded project, and one of the things we'll be bringing to you in November is our consideration of what is really important for general fund allocation, because a project is important to the community but is less likely to secure grant funding versus projects that we think if we continue to work on grant funding that's the focus we should have. For this project, submitting the application, we would do that in December. The recommendations come out in February, and Council takes action on the CDBG funds in March. So it's still within the budget review and recommendation process, so that if we were unsuccessful and we decided to take a different approach, that's something that we could present to the Commission in April. The work effort that is underway and has been completed so far has made some advancement to getting all of the improvements done. The fact that we have the accessible walkway, that was part of this project, and the improvements around the restrooms and the accessibility. And then clearly the focus was more on the transportation pedestrian improvements for grant funding initially. So we're hopeful that we've done everything else around it, that it makes it a more attractive grant-funded project, or at least to some degree grant-funded, and then we figure out the difference later.
Thank you. Did you have a question, Ms. Clark?
Oh, it was just minor. I was wondering if the lack of backs on the benches was a strategic safety maneuver to prevent napping.
Not so much the backs, because you can still lay down on the benches. We're looking at various options for the design where you have basically a low handrail in the bench area that prevents you from laying down. But no, those are kind of a standard park bench design.
I would just like to say that the improvements that are getting done, especially the traffic improvements, are really important to the neighborhood. And I think this project has pushed them along. So thank you for that.
This is the Chase Palm Park walkway improvements, which are focused on the north side of Cabrillo in Chase Palm Park. You can see I've indicated where the new pathways are proposed in yellow, here, here, and here. Back in March, we were at a point where we didn't have Historic Landmarks Commission design review. We didn't have building permits. Since then, we've secured both of those items. We're proposing to go out to bid next month and start construction in early 2017. Right now, we have $128,000 in capital funds to complete the project, and really the core purpose of this project is to get pedestrians out of the narrow parkway here and onto a proper pathway and out of the line of traffic. Okay, Kids World renovation. This is one of the larger projects that we're gearing up for construction in the coming year, calendar year. This is a rendering of the proposed improvements. As you can see, we're not proposing anything drastic in terms of changing the aesthetics. Really, one of the great qualities about Kids World is that it's unique. It has a very earthy quality. It's wood, primarily construction. It has a great history being built by the community. One of the things that the department looked at when we took on this project is how do we make the playground safer, both from a structural standpoint. It's built primarily out of wood and is coming towards the end of a typical lifespan for a wood structure. So the solution for that is to really beef up the structure using steel components, screws that have been developed for structural strength, but do it in a way where we're not going to change the appearance of it. And that was a challenge, but we think that we have a great solution. The other interesting thing about Kids World is that every connection is unique. Every piece of equipment is unique. And so that's going to require a lot of time on the contractor's part to go in and fix all of those various connections. So let me talk about a couple more detailed aspects of the project, because this is really the first time that the commission is seeing what the proposal is. Before I do that, so just to orient everybody, the picture on top is the view from Garden Street. So you can see probably one of the more familiar areas are the tile handprint area, the entry there, and then on this side is the picnic area. And this is looking from the other side of the playground. So the picnic area is over here, and there is on this corner the tot lot, which is an area of the playground that's designed for 2 to 5-year-olds. One of the interesting things about going to Kids World is figuring out how to get into the tot lot, especially if you have a stroller and 2 toddlers in tow. So that was one of the design objectives too, not only improving the structural strength, but also improving accessibility into the areas of the playground that are somewhat hard to get to. So one of the big proposals and changes to the area, here's the tile area that I pointed out. Currently, one would walk up a ramp, a wooden ramp, into this little amphitheater area, and then down another ramp into the tot lot area. And this has a fence that completely segregates access from the main entrance to the park into the tot lot area, which makes sense from a safety standpoint. You don't want your 2 to 5-year-old running out of the park while you're talking to a friend. So the proposal is to currently actually remove this ramp and install a gate both at the park entrance as well as into the tot lot. So one would enter in through a gate and then enter into the tot lot. There would be another gate here to exit out of the tot lot. So the tot lot then would become very accessible, but also secure. Another aspect of improvement is another gate as you enter into this entryway. And I have a couple renderings to more clearly show how that's going to work. Some other small design changes are reorienting this slide so that it points out this way. As one comes in here, you wouldn't walk straight into a kid popping out of that slide. So various safety improvements. We also are making accessibility improvements, so identifying what are called transfer platforms for members of our community that want to use this park but haven't been able to do so in the past because of various accessibility issues. Okay, so this is a ground level view of the tile entry area. You can see the existing wooden ramp. You can see as you enter in here, you look in here and wonder, how do I get in there? The proposal here is to have a gate. You would enter in, and then right behind there, you would have another gate. And for folks that aren't going into that area, it's very easy then to proceed up to the stage area or enter into the larger part of the park that's designed for older kids. Some other minor improvements that we can see are, this is a unoriginal modification to the bridge design. So you can see this white picket design got installed sometime in the last probably 15 years. We're proposing to get it up to code, but also change it back to the original wood design. Shifting over to the other main entry to Kids World, currently there's a curving pathway, and you can see if you're trying to get in here, if you're in a wheelchair, you need to get up these two railroad ties. There's about a 6 to 8 inch elevation change there. The decomposed granite also has made it a little bit harder to get into the park there. So the proposal is to align the walkway and get rid of that grade change, as well as put in a gate. And then the other small design change is, if you look at these pickets, they're very wide and very enticing for a small child to run out and escape. So all of these will now meet code. This will be a self-closing gate, and so the safety factor obviously goes up. So in terms of the next step for Kids World, we are submitting our building plans in the next week to the building department. Construction is anticipated to begin in February. We'll go out to bid and solicit bids from a construction firm. We anticipate 6 weeks of construction. Before we do that, we'll have a fairly robust outreach program, signage on the playground to indicate that the playground's going to be closed for 6 weeks, and we'll contact various user groups that either have scheduled field trips to this location and so forth. In terms of the cost, $422,000 is budgeted for construction. 1,000 Steps renovation. This is, for those of you not familiar with this location, at the end of Santa Cruz Boulevard, one of the main access ways off of the Mesa neighborhood down to the beach. This is an interesting structure built in the 1920s. As one descends down from street elevation, coming down here, you enter onto this platform and then come around here and go further down and eventually make your way all the way down to the beach area. As you can see, the lower landing has taken significant abuse from storm activity, waves smashing boulders into this concrete, and then sand and rocks wearing away the stair treads there. Currently, we are in negotiation with two engineering firms. One is a geotechnical engineering firm to get at the soil properties and various other technical parameters for the renovation. And then the second firm is a civil engineering firm that's very experienced with coastal accessway design, particularly in areas that have wave activity. And then we are under contract with a land surveyor. He's completed his field work, as well as an architectural historian that's going to do a historic sites and structure report and then we'll go to Historic Landmarks Commission to present that report to them. So currently we have $200,000 available to get us through preliminary design and permitting. We anticipate that process will have preliminary designs by April of 2017 and start our permitting process at that point. We don't have funding currently for final design and construction. And lastly, the Mackenzie Park off-leash dog area. We held a community meeting in June, had a great turnout, received comments from neighbors, dog enthusiasts, business owners. We took that feedback and developed the plans further. This is a working drawing that our staff developed based on some of the feedback that we received, and it essentially shows the same overall concept design that we rolled out at the community meeting, and that includes a entry plaza that realigns the entry with the fairly new crosswalk on State Street. It comes into a landscaped plaza area. There will be an entry here into a completely fenced-in small dog area, and then for larger dog owners, they would go down here and enter into the larger dog run. Both areas have 2 gated entries, so you enter in, take your dog off leash, and then enter into the main play area. We also have various amenities included, such as water bowls and pet waste bags, trash cans, and so forth. One of the interesting aspects that we're including here is we are proposing demolition of the vacant building, but proposing to retain the concrete slab. We have done some preliminary investigation and concluded at this point that the slab can be reused as the entry slab, so that will reduce our overall construction costs. And then we're also looking at various fencing options, both along here as well as the main fence areas for the proposed off-leash dog area. This will be the city's first dedicated off-leash dog area that is fully fenced. So that'll be something new for both the department and the community. We have $50,000 in general funds right now to get us through final design and perhaps a portion of the initial implementation. The project needs $300,000 to construct, and if fully funded, we would be looking at construction in spring of 2018. So we will be going to ABR November 7th, and this is really more than anything to show you kind of the process that we go through. We have our concept design, and then we translate it into a AutoCAD drawing or an engineer drawing that will eventually get turned into a construction drawing set. For this project, it's a little bit hard to show on a PowerPoint because it's essentially fencing and concrete pads, but I'm sure all of you can imagine the activity and the area dog owners that will want to use this facility.
Mr. Thompson, what do you envision the surface of the area to be?
Well, Chair and Commissioners, we have, as I mentioned, the concrete entryways, but once you get off of the concrete pads, it'll transition to fiber bark that is specially designed for dogs. So it'll be similar to what you see in some of our playgrounds that have a fiber bark. Bark.
Is it easy to pick up waste out of that?
It is.
Okay,
very easy.
Great.
Easier than picking up waste off of, say, like a turf surface. So we included 3 projects here just to make the Commission aware that we have additional projects that staff are working on that are more in the concept planning stages, and they include Dwight Murphy Field renovation, Bonnet Park access improvements in adult fitness, which I mentioned when I discussed the playground area. And then we also have funding for the Shoreline Park playground replacement. And we'll see more details on these projects as well as others next month when we come back with the 6-year CIP. And with that, I'd be happy to take any additional questions.
Are there questions? Ms. Clark?
I just had a comment that looking at all the capital projects you have in the works and in the future, I'm really struck by the emphasis on safety in all of these projects, from the bathrooms to even the dog park has a safety element for that back corner. And redoing Kids World, I always found that place magical, but at the same time terrifying, especially with how fast my children were. So I really appreciate the department's focus on safety when looking at where to put our dollars. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? It's just interesting to see the wide variety of projects going forward and to look at our parks as they're not static. You know, everything changes and everything has to grow and be redone, and it's a large operation to keep moving forward. So thank you very much for everything that you do.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioners.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you, too. I thought the presentation was excellent, and it's a great overview of the tremendous work you're doing and the incredible magnitude of work that's going on. And I wanted to echo Commissioner Clark's comments about safety, because that's always, and I know in play areas, it changes all the time. You know, it changes, you have to have bigger fall zones and this and that. So it's really, it's hard to keep up with it, but it's really good. I'm also very appreciative of the work being done, although we don't have the funding, and I know it's going to cost a lot of money, but the infrastructure, the beginning of the infrastructure repairs to 1,000 Steps is pretty significant. That's a I think, as we all know, it's well overdue, and it's going to be very exciting to see it advance through some of its stages, even though construction may be a while off. But thank you again.
Ms. Zachary, yeah.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I just want to add a little bit of information because we are almost to the 10-year mark on some of these projects. So 10 years ago, we had funding to renovate 1,000 Steps. And then due to the economic downturn, we gave that up for other priorities for the city. Similarly, Kids World has been a 10-year discussion. We feel like we're almost at the finish line with Kids World. We haven't done the construction yet, but really the amount of consideration that's gone into that project is significant, and a lot of it is due to the department's consideration for the community's value of that playground. It's pretty unheard of for this type of playground to still exist after 20 years. We've maintained it really well. We want it to last another 20 years. So we're really excited that we're moving forward with it. And it's I think we had someone from Leathers and Associates or another playground company that said that there isn't another playground of its same era still around. So we feel proud, but also just recognizing, people want it done yesterday, and oftentimes that's not that easy. And then funding is really critical. We've been talking about putting in adult fitness equipment at Bonnet Park for 10 years too. And we've tried to fund it. We may end up just having to pay for it ourselves. And then in looking at 1,000 Steps, similarly, tried to get there. We luckily got Mesa Lane Steps done. We thought, if nothing else, let's get that one done. So we're really hopeful we'd be able to move forward with 1,000 Steps, but we're looking at $1 million project. So when you're thinking about capital and you're thinking about our investment in capital, it's significant. And how do we secure those funds to make it happen?
Mr. Lesnar-Buxton, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you very much. This is really informative. I just have a suggestion. I know you probably don't have the money, but it would be nice if we had kiosks at all these parks pointing out points of interest, although the building or, for example, I wrote as a building in Mackenzie Park, and during the primary election, it took me 45 minutes to find the polling place, and a kiosk just with a simple map on a billboard would be such a nice addition, pointing out key points of interest in meeting rooms. Thank you.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Lesnar, Lesnar Buxton. Prior to your joining the commission, we actually had a presentation on our sign program guidelines, and we are actually working on exactly what you've just requested. We went through a year-long process to develop the guidelines, working with the sign committee. Those were approved in July of this year. One of the items that was before council last month was approving the final design contract with Hunt Design so that we can pull together all the specifications, as well as program every single park and recreation facility for the ones that really do need a kiosk so that people can figure out where to go and what's of interest to the park. In the park, some parks are so tiny that it's pretty obvious what we have there. We anticipate that that work effort will be complete in the early part of next calendar year, and we will go out to bid for construction so that we can get the signs manufactured and installed. And one of our priorities will be the type of signage that you mentioned in our park areas, because it is very much needed.
Thank you.
Well, that concludes our business for tonight's meeting. And so with that, we will stand adjourned.